The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and the town of Sigil lay directly in its path. Hexcraft Eventide Sigil is a game that stands out for 3 reasons. Firstly, it is, as of making this, the newest game by Oleander, the developer of the ever-unsettling PAGAN trilogy. Secondly, it's an extremely difficult and complex permadeath immersive sim. And finally, I find it very difficult to say. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, does old Hextide evil god damn it. Well, before we look at these hex cridgels, let's head back to the not-too-distant year of 2003. A certain dark comedy FPS game was released to some rather controversial responses. Postal 2 had you taking control of a guy who had some pretty straightforward tasks and errands to run. The controversial part being that within the game's systems you had complete freedom, meaning that on your way to, I don't know, the bank, you could shoot up a police station, set the bodies alight, and then attempt to put the fire out with your own urine, which is apparently, and this is news to me, something that people generally frown upon. Now, as grim as I make that sound, it is done in a very tongue-in-cheek, shock humor South Park kind of way, and overall, it's a good time. Let's fast forward to 2005. Young me was spending his days not knowing what a YouTube was, and completely unknown to him, a Russian game developer was releasing a game called More Utopia, or as you may know it, Pathologic. And in many ways, it was similar to Postal 2, but with 3 main differences. It's a Russian game, it lacks the comedy, and everyone's sad. So, in other words, it's a Russian game. And finally, we skip into the hateful year of 2015, where a controversial, edgy, and downright terrible game came out, fittingly called Hatred. In this game, you run around in an incel's paradise, shooting innocent civilians. And it's just awful, but it exists because killing civilians is edgy, and being edgy is cool, and being cool means that Dad might finally look me in the eyes. Now, we get these 3 games, take the format of Postal, the atmosphere and pessimism of Pathologic, and the moral disgust of Hatred, then we refund Hatred, and what you get is Eventide Sigil. You get this game. In this, you play as somebody attempting to hunt down the Holy Grail alongside the knights of the late King Arthur, and you do so within this joyless, brutalist husk of a town called Sigil. This town is inhabited by identical, faceless, and largely aimless civilians, brutal yet ineffectual police officers, caches of easily accessible weapons and explosives, an esoteric cabal of malicious cultists with obscured goals, and 7 knights who are willing to do anything to meet their goals. Well, also, absolutely no good vibes. Now, you may think that the Knights of King Arthur are the good boys, and in the case of Pizza Knight Percival, you may just be right. But the others are... They're real baddies. So they'll start the game polite enough, but as you go through the 3 days that the game covers, collecting the 5 relics that are scattered throughout the world and act as the game's main objectives, the Knights go nuts. If they even think you or another knight and/or police officer are hiding something that they may want, they will annihilate you with bullets. And in some cases, they do it for seemingly no reason other than pent-up displeasure. And if they get sad enough, they'll off themselves. But honestly, the worst thing they do, and this is pretty extreme, so be warned, they sometimes call you rude names. Now, I can deal with violent paranoia, spontaneous gunfights, and mass murder, but this is simply unacceptable. So to summarize, these knights are real scamps. And they all have their own agendas and personalities and ways of ruining each playthrough, and honestly, the police are not much better. I've seen them kill knights, me, and each other for seemingly no reason, and if you push them hard enough, they'll just abandon a place, leading to my favourite NPC spawning, the Culty Boys. And by favourite NPCs, I mean, I hate them, mostly because they're the strongest, they're the most hostile, and I hate them. But they do leave around some cool statues and such, so maybe they're not so bad. Now, you may think that it sounds like there's a lot going on, and yeah, there is. Because this is an immersive sim. For those who don't know what an immersive sim is, here's a very surface-level description. It's basically a game where the player interacts with a system-driven world rather than relying on scripted events and triggers. In other words, the player interacts with the world rather than the world interacting with the player. The purest example I can think of would be the S.T.A.L.K.E.R series, where you can really feel that the world and the people/creatures within it would carry on regardless of your input. To put it even simpler, there's a lot of mechanics to interact with. Now, the immersive sim elements of Hexcraft revolve almost entirely around the knights and their seemingly incomprehensible AI. And I don't mean incomprehensible in the Cthulhu sense or the Five Nights at Freddy's lore sense, but rather like the Skynet sense. I, as an alleged mortal, am not nearly clever enough to keep track of all the variables and potential outcomes at play, so I just tend to roll with the punches, or, more accurately, mafioso hitman-style slayings. This unpredictability makes the game pretty challenging, as not only can key items be missing or stolen by other knights, but you also have to deal with the repercussions of their actions. I have been in a situation where 2 knights have fought over a relic, killed several police in the process, both died, dropping the relic in an area that was now, thanks to their wanton violence, infested with cultists and therefore extremely difficult to reach. That was unbelievably frustrating and aggravatingly cool. I had absolutely no part in this, and it just kind of happened. I'd often play through the game doing absolutely nothing just to see what hilarious yet thematically horrific scrapes the knights could get themselves into, and honestly, I can't tell if it's more like an unbroadcastable sitcom or a dysfunctional safari, but either way, I'm having fun. Do you know what makes this less fun? And absurdly difficult? And the source of my many on-stream breakdowns? This game is permadeath. I'm definitely gonna die to this jabroni. Yeah, there it is. Oh, don't kill me, please. I have come so far. What did I just say? Oh no. We were so close. No. Oh, this is a disaster of the highest caliber. Never mind, we're good. Oh god, this is a disaster of the highest caliber. Thank god there's... Oh! Why? Why does he do this? Oh, fellas, what have you done? Oh, fellas. Okay, now there's more of them. And I know I'm not doing any damage. Okay, run! Don't die! Run and don't... I don't even have faith. It's not like Pagan, where you just restart from the last loading screen. If you die, you get a bad end? I question that because of some stuff I'll definitely elaborate on later. And you start from the very beginning again, which is even more brutal than it sounds, as the AI will pretty much always do something differently in each playthrough. So it's hard to have a set strategy. But even through the permadeath and the unpredictability and the standard gameplay challenge that the game offers, there is one kind of difficulty here that I have not seen many games attempt. Moral difficulty. In Hexblade, no, that's a D&D thing. In Eventide Minecraft story mode, you do a lot of mass shootings if you want consistent and fast results. And while a lot of that is against other knights, police or cultists, there's also a lot of unarmed harmless civilians. Now of course, some of you will say, you liberal soy boy beta SJW virtue signaling politically correct blue pill communo fascist bootlicker. For the record, I'm only one of those things. I do drink soy by the gallon. Killing innocent civilians in a video game? How can that distress you? They're not real. And if you feel the need to ask that, I think we simply have differing views on the purpose and scope of video games. Alternatively, you're the game's protagonist. Because one thing that the developer mentioned several times on both Twitter and Twitch is that this game is an incel terrorism simulator. If you don't know what an incel is, I envy you. If you don't know what a terrorist is, well done, that's quite the feat. But an incel terrorist is a very real combination of those two already unpleasant things. Many have died because some people are so disillusioned and delusional that they will murder innocent people due to a perceived cultural schism of which they view themselves to be on the losing side of. And if you want a very quick way to become uncomfortable, try describing these people in a relatively impartial way like I just did. And yeah, that's what this game is about. You are one of these people. This definitely moves the game closer to hatred than Postal, but at least this game has something to say. Oh god, this is a very dark game when you start to look into it. Let me explain to you what makes this an incel terrorism simulator. If you've been on the internet for long enough, chances are you've heard the term white knight. Typically, this is used in a context where a man is aggressively jumping to the defense of a woman, often with little or no reason to, in the name of chivalry. Another term that people use is nice guys, which refers to the subset of men that claim women don't go for the nice guys like them anymore, and that chivalry is dead. These kinds of people end up one of two ways. They grow out of it, or they get dragged into an echo chamber of like-minded mugs that effectively radicalize each other. And that's when you get incel terrorists. People so bitter at the world that they view as impure and corrupt that they will take extreme actions in retaliation. In other words, they view themselves as chivalrous knights in an unchivalrous world. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the game's civilians are all identical and faceless, while the knights all have their own bright colours and coats of arms. The game also makes references to far-right conspiracy theories like Pizzagate, which seem to attract a very similar crowd. And I think I also caught some references to real-world mass shootings and such, And what I'm saying is that this is a deeply disturbing game which makes you act these things out. I would call it exploitative if it wasn't quite as artful. So you might be wondering what kind of endings such a thematically dark game has, and I'll tell you, the 4 that I have found are about as cynical as you'd expect. Without spoiling anything, I'll give you a brief rundown. The quote-unquote best ending is absolutely the one where you fail by dying. The words, "and from the wound came only blood," appear, referencing the stories about how Jesus bled both blood and water. This basically tells us that in your dying moments you realize you are not a savior. Yes, that's the happiest ending. The one where you succeed basically says, "Good job! It's not enough for you though, is it?" The ending where you run out of time is pretty hard to decipher, and the secret ending is, well, it's secret. Keep in mind that the first 2 are simply my interpretations, but they're pretty dark no matter how you look at it. While initially playing the game, I remember appreciating how dark it was, but that was before I'd had time to think about what it meant. And the thing I find most disturbing is actually my own reaction to it. I streamed my first playthroughs and people in my chat were aghast at how ready and willing I was to commit terrible acts in-game. Yet I didn't really think twice, because I was streaming. I had to be active and get things done in the way I thought was most efficient. That kind of peer pressure normalized these terrible actions. I didn't even notice until I was playing solo and became hugely uncomfortable about it. But by that stage, people who had watched my streams had started playing as I used to, as I never took the time to explain the alternatives. Again, some of you will think I'm taking this too seriously, but to those people I say this. If you don't let media engage you on levels you find uncomfortable, you're not getting everything from it. Because this strange guilt I feel over the game is wonderful in a horrible, morbid way. I didn't think games could expose me like that. But, you know, Minecraft story mode did. Sorry, Hexcraft story mode did. Now, on to lighter things. Do I prefer it over Pagan Autogeny? Ultimately, no. Autogeny was very special to me, and I'm sure it was very special to a lot of you as well. Its unique setting, delivery, and mystery are extremely difficult to beat, and it was genuinely unsettling without becoming off-putting. That's not to say Hexcraft is bad, not even remotely. Oleander Garden has once again hit it out of the park and made one of the best games of the year, and at this stage, they've definitely reached auteur status within games, which is not a common thing. But I don't think I want to play this game again. Half due to its unsettling nature, and half because I took the time to find the secret ending. At this point, I'd like to say that you should definitely play it if it has even remotely interested you. But do not go for the secret ending. For your own sake, simply don't. I'm not the same person as I was before I found it. Anyway, the game is great in a horrible, awful way. I think I really like it. And with that, I'm brought to the end. Thank you so much for watching and bearing with the long wait for this one. You can follow me on the links on screen, like Twitter, Twitch, and Patreon, the latter of which has my own faithful knights that I'd like to thank, starting with Sir Untrusted Life, purveyor of ASCII roguelikes, and Lovecraft goblins, and I must say, a rather strapping chap. Next is Sir Thulu135, Knight Regent and Chronicler of Orbis, and confirmed to be neither an incel nor a terrorist. And now we arrive, as we always do, despite our best efforts, at the Teeps. Less of a knight, more of a sword for hire, big into pillaging and murdering and blood and so on. So much blood. Too much. Too much blood. Let's move on. The next of the great knights is... oh Christ. It's also the Teeps. Genuinely, I now have 2 patrons at this tier who go by the Teeps. I am both amazed and aghast. The Teeps is expanding his reach. And finally, the head of this knightly order, Ernst the Ace. Slayer of incels, annihilator of terrorists, merchant of good vibes, and champion of the condemned footage. Seriously, go into my Discord server and take a look at the condemned footage channel. Ernst has made that place terrifying. Shine on, you crazy diamond. And with that, I'm brought to the end. Thanks very much again. And don't forget, charge your sigil, burn the rest.